With that, we are going to continue on with our next Fireside chat. You probably all know about V Jagadeesh. He's a known name in Silicon Valley, serial entrepreneur. He's also a professor and has a wealth of knowledge about this space. So we'll have a great conversation with him. To moderate this Fireside chat, we have Chuck Comey, who's a corporate finance partner at Morrison Foerster. And I'm very positive that you will get a lot of lessons and a lot of tips and tricks about scaling your business to the next level. So with that, please welcome Chuck Comey and V Jagadeesh.
Well, thanks to everyone, and thanks especially to BV for joining for this fireside chat on entrepreneurship and scaling operations. I think BV is the quintessential serial entrepreneur, having successfully co-founded and served as CTO for Exodus, which of course pioneered the data center sector and successfully executed the IPO for Exodus in 1998, and then founded NetScaler, successfully sold to Citrix for $325 million, and also sold a company to NetMagic to NTT, as well as EduRite, which became a unit of Pearson. And BV is active in investing himself as well as a philanthropy, so it's a true honor to be with you.
Thank you.
To start our time together, I thought it would be good to role play. And so let's imagine that I'm a young entrepreneur. Actually, I'm neither young nor an entrepreneur, but I come to you and...
Young at heart.
Young at heart, right. And I come to you and I say, you know, I've got the technology, I've got my 5 to 10 guys, I've got the concept, I've done the road work and I've raised the money, I've got $1.5 million from Andreessen, NEA, and best of all, KAAJ Ventures. I can't do everything, so what are the 3 to 5 things I need to make sure I take care of in the next 12 to 18 months to get this thing to the next level as we scale up?
Excellent question. So before I answer this question, let me pose a couple of questions to the audience just to find out the level of where they are in terms of their company growth and other things. How many of you entrepreneurs? Please raise your hands. Okay. How many of you are in the revenue stage? Just a few of them. Okay. So it looks like a lot of them have started their own companies, either in the R&D phase or product development cycle or service development cycle. So to answer your question, the first 12 to 18 months, the focus obviously is going to be, heavily focused on, number one, getting the right set of people for the goals or the objectives that you have in terms of what you want to build, what you want to bring to the customers. Number two is, this happens in parallel. So 1 or 2 people in the organization must be facing the potential customers and getting validation from the customer just to make sure that the idea that you have, right, is being validated. As a matter of fact, I was just introduced to an entrepreneur just about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and he was in a situation where some other angel investors have invested like $500,000 to $600,000, and he's looking for the next round. And strangely enough, when I asked the question of who has validated your idea, 0. In fact, I introduced 2 potential customers, and those were the only 2. This is after almost 1.5 years. And my question was, what were you doing for the last 1.5 years? He said, my technology is very complex, so I'm trying to build the technology. That's not the way it works. While you are building your technology, while you are building your product, it's absolutely essential to also ensure that you are talking to potential customers, because one of the biggest challenges, and it also leads to either a failure or challenges, is when you bring your first product or service to the market, If the gap between what you offer to what the customer wants is significantly high, then the excitement is lost. Because you go pitch to the customers, you create the excitement, customer is excited that there is this new solution or product that does some useful thing for him. Now when you bring the real product, it doesn't do 25-30% of what I need. So that means you pretty much have to go back to the drawing board, or you have to buy another 6 months or 1 year. In the meantime, I have lost the interest. And it's also bad for the company because you have now leaked out your idea, and the same customer could be basically telling someone else that, hey, if you can solve this problem for me, right, I would be interested in this. So I'm a person, I'm very, very, very customer-centric. I want to make sure that there is always that loop that you're closing with the customer. So my recommendation to the entrepreneurs is, if you're not doing already, make sure you get the contacts, either your own contacts or through your network of people that you meet in conferences like this, right? Go and pitch your idea, get it validated. I'm not saying you should get the idea from the customer. No, you validate your idea from the customer.
So from the outset, really build the customer base, very key. One of the other things that is critical, I think, from the outset, obviously, is the team. And I think any venture capitalist that tells the truth will say that whatever else they validate in their own due diligence process, at the end of the day, it's the people that they're investing in, as evidenced by your success. And so when you look at it from the inside out, you got to have that core team from the very beginning. And so when you're starting out, obviously having had a success or two, it's a lot easier to attract. But at the very beginning, how do you, as you're selling and validating with the customers, you're selling and validating to those key employees. How do you build that? And then how do you, as things go along, strike the balance between the technology execution and this team building and managing those people so that they're excited about what they're doing?
Mm-hmm. This is a classic problem for any early stage company, right? This is actually the biggest question that people have. I don't have enough money, or I don't have a name to attract the talent. But let me tell you, I've gone through this when we built our first company back in mid-90s. And by the way, the challenges, the problems, all of that is exactly the same. For an entrepreneur at any given point of time, I've been doing this for the last 20 years now. The market size may have changed, the market may have changed, the problem may have changed, but for an entrepreneur, the situation is exactly the same thing. You start a company, you always have a problem for money, you always have a problem for people, you always have execution sort of challenges. So at the end, the most important thing is the passion that you have and how well you pitch that passion to a potential employee. That's how we built our company. And I was giving an example yesterday during the mentor session. So we had a situation where I actually advertised, this is back in mid-90s, there was no concept of this internet, so-called internet. We announced on these news groups, right? And one guy, engineer, a very qualified engineer who responded to that advertisement request that I sent. This is the guy that we wanted to hire. And there was a 30% salary difference between what we could offer to the job that he had in San Francisco. This is like a 22, 23-year-old guy, really young guy, and his first inclination is to actually work in the city, in San Francisco. On top of it, he has a 33% higher salary than what we were offering. And we couldn't offer any more than that because we had two other engineers. And if I had increased the salary for him,
what are they going to say? Yeah.
The other two, and we just couldn't afford because we were not funded. We were pretty much running from our own money that we had saved, from our consulting business. But let me tell you, at the end, this guy joined us, number one, because of the job and the difference that he was going to make. Number two is the people that he was going to work with. So ultimately it comes down to you as to how well you articulate, how well you bring the passion out, and how well you treat your employees. And people not always are actually looking for money, right? So there are examples, and even many of the companies that I worked, they have attracted some of the best talent for either zero salary until they get funded, or some very minimal salaries.
So one of the lessons, I guess, is that entrepreneurship has to include the charismatic leadership,
Absolutely.
the ability to sell and make those sales. One of the things that you obviously grapple with, assuming you've got money in the door, is balancing the competing needs of the organization, even while it's still small. So you've got the beta version that needs perhaps more R&D development, but there's a marketing budget that has to be developed as well as you're doing those customer contacts. So what are the challenges that, again, the guy or gal at the top needs to be aware of? You're trying to construct this backbone. You've got HR, marketing, product development, management, and putting that all together with a time allocation challenge that you have.
Yeah.
What are the keys there?
So, the smartness of a startup company and an entrepreneur, right, is all about focus. With minimal resources, minimal dollars, your ability to execute and your ability to win. I mean, if you look at history of this place, every startup company has done this successfully. And the ones who have done this have been successful. The ones who have not done it, they've run out of money or they've just shut the company, right? So it's all about figuring out the product that you have, where it's applicable, and how am I going to focus? If I have 100 leads, right, in my pocket, perhaps maybe 5 or 10 are the only ones that are applicable to my product. So how do you nail this down up front rather than talking to all the 100
Taking the time,
customers and spinning your entire company cycles, right? It's just a total waste of time. So that's number one. Number two is even nailing down your functionality of your product, right? To the extent where those 5 or 10 customers that you're targeting, that you pretty much complete the product need. And usually it doesn't happen because when you do your job right of getting the customer feedback, you should be at a level where at least you are close to 95% of what a customer wants. And the remaining 5% is what you do within that 1 week, 2 weeks time. In fact, for us at NetScaler, when WebEx, which became a very early customer, and WebEx was a fairly large company at that time. This was back in 2002, 2003 timeframe. And they were already using Nortel product. They were already using Cisco product. And we had to find an entrance to get into that company, which we did. And then they came back and they said, there's this one functionality, right, that I need. And if you can do that functionality, and by the way, I've been asking both Cisco and Nortel for the last 1.5 years, and they haven't delivered.
Not a priority for them, yeah.
Not a priority for them. So if you can do this, right, I'm willing to purchase this product. So we said, okay, would you be giving us a purchase order if we do this? So then we did an analysis internally. Is this something that is specific to WebEx, or is this something that a larger market wants? Once we determined, then engineers worked day and night for the next 10 days. We delivered, we got the purchase. And by the way, that was such an anchor account, which is what led, right, to a successful funding in 2002 for us. So things like this are so crucial, navigating your functions or features, to ensure that you win that early 5 to 10 customers.
Yeah, so it's the customer focus and making that a priority in terms of how your product development is being targeted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then turning to management, and obviously Exodus, NetScaler, as you look back over the time where you've grown these organizations, what would you, and this is maybe comes a little bit closer to home, what would you say has been your biggest management success, and what was the biggest setback or maybe challenge that you experienced through, over those several companies?
I think key success is to make all the people to work well, That's the number one. So you have to somehow figure out, right, how to get the maximum out of your employees. So the biggest challenge that most companies face is, as the company starts to grow, there is politics that starts to creep in. It's imminent, right? Now, how do you avoid this politics? Or if you just look at, why do even this politics actually happen? It happens because there is somebody who did not deliver, and typically it's the sales. Sales didn't meet the numbers, and they didn't meet the numbers, and he wants an excuse. So he points at marketing, and he points at
tech.
engineering.
Yeah.
Right? So if you allow that, then I can guarantee you, when the VP sales starts to complain about your VP engineering and VP marketing in his staff meeting, I can guarantee you his staff will start talking, exactly. And you as a CEO or the founder, the number one thing you got to do, moment you sense that, bring the people into your room, right? Resolve that issue. Because at the end, in a startup company, everybody is working for that one goal. And that one goal is to build a successful company, right? That's the beauty of it. So figure that out and solve it right in the early stages itself, rather than that
nip it in the bud. Yeah. What about maybe a challenge or something, if, now in retrospect, if you had a chance to do over again, what would you do differently, if anything?
I would say focusing on, we heard this even yesterday in the keynote as well from Jeff Weiner, right? Giving an example of Apple, when Jobs went back, he saw like hundreds of products that the company had, and he had to just nail it down to that one thing. If I have to redo, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was jumping into building a totally different product line, which we thought for a while that this product line would actually help increase the average selling price within a customer. And that actually brought tremendous defocus in the company. So I would say we had a setback of 6 to 8 months or so. So we missed 1 or 2 quarters of results. But we were a young startup company, so there is always learning out of that, and we leverage some of the learning from that to make our future product better. But not realizing, first of all, jumping into conclusion to get into another product line, and once you realize that this is not working out, not cutting it off very quickly. I would say those are the things that I would avoid going forward.
We're obviously, as an organization, and my firm is proud to be a corporate sponsor, focused on opportunities in India as well as the U.S., and you've obviously successfully exploited those. When do you think it makes sense for an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley to use India to further achieve scale, and how best to go about that, and some of the things you've seen in the past that might be helpful for the audience?
Yeah, so there are multiple models that you can look at. You can actually start off, if it's a very high-tech kind of company which requires enormous amount of customer interaction, it's probably not a good idea to kick off India day one, because of the closed discussions and hallway conversations and customer conversations, all of that, right? So productivity is so important. But at the same time, if you have a good team in India, because I've seen some of the companies that succeed well, where certain limited functionality and team that you can trust right from day one. This is something that you've worked in the past, and they're very loyal to you. They will make it work for you. Right? I've seen success, but I'm not one that actually experiments on a model like that. And coming back to the other aspect of India, which is sort of exciting, because I'm also investing in some companies in India. is the fact that there is a shift that you're seeing today in India versus maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, 5 or 6 years ago, every time when I visited India, right, every entrepreneur who pretty much came and talked to me wanted to build the next Infosys or next Wipro, services sort of a company. But today, there are many technology companies, and India itself being a destination market, there's a lot of the things like the e-businesses that are happening in India as well. So I'm actually an investor in one of the companies, and I'm pretty upbeat on the fact that this is a real high-tech sort of company, which is a product-centric. And this company was actually born in India, and the founder and the engineering team, the first set of engineering team, came out of Bombay, Mumbai, and now we have relocated the company here to the US to sort of take this product to global markets. And if we succeed in making this company successful, I would say this would be one of the very first or few companies, right, where technology originated in India with some investments coming from early investors and coming here, getting venture capitalist funding from Sand Hill Road, Silicon Valley investors, and going global, right, and selling a real high-tech kind of a problem. This would be probably one of the very first or few companies that is doing it.
So India really as a source of incubation for then expanding into
Correct.
global markets.
Yeah, because now India has become a destination market. So in fact, this particular company, as they built the first product, before they moved to the US, they actually validated the product in India. So the whole company, to the stage where the product was working, was built like under $1 million, which you just cannot do here.
Let's talk for one brief minute about exit issues. You've obviously seen a number of different kinds of situations, both in the IPO and M&A context. Do you think that the entrepreneur needs to have consciously an exit strategy even when they're starting to scale? In other words, should that strategy shape how you're designing, your company as you scale operationally?
Yeah, it's very interesting you ask this. If you ask me, I would never build a company
to sell it
with the intention of selling. I mean, that's what you hear everywhere. But on the contrary, you can always give examples of smart entrepreneurs who find a gap in an industry and building a company and successfully selling it. I have several entrepreneurs. I haven't funded them, but there are several examples where if you know the industry well, if you know what gaps actually exist in that industry, it cannot be a gap in a company.
Yes.
It has to be a gap in the industry. And you can build a company and prove initially with whatever 5, 10, 20 customers, and you're almost guaranteed. And this entrepreneur is very happy. He has done this like 2 or 3 times. He successfully builds the company and sells it for $100 to $125 million, right? So there's a small investor who owns like 20-25%, and he and his team owns about 80% of the company. So it's a good return for everyone.
Yeah. It's clear to me, we work a lot with Intel and Intel Capital, and in the current environment where the IPO channel is somewhat constrained, there are tremendous opportunities, on the corporate side. If you scale it right and have the technology that's disruptive, that they can plug it in, it can be very, very compelling. Maybe to just close, your thoughts on the current, obviously as an investor, the current environment and some of your views about looking out, this year and into 2014, some of the key trends and opportunities.
Well, I think, the key thing, you've already heard some of the topics that we have had, obviously. But let me tell you, because I've seen a lot of questions that I've heard in the last two days being here. How do you get a VC funding, right? Is it really possible to get VC funding? So if you are a first-time entrepreneur And if you are an unknown entity, kind of like what we were 18 years ago, right, best is to build to some extent where there is proof point. Then it becomes much easier to get the funding, right? If you are an entrepreneur who's got a track record, who've done some wonderful things in your life, I have seen VCs actually chasing these guys, and these are first time. They've never done companies, right? They worked for some large companies, but these are really like amazing people who've done wonders. And VCs go after these guys.
It's an auction at that point.
It's an auction at that point, right?
Yeah.
And they go after and incubate these guys and fund them. So that's the fascinating part, right? So it's not like VCs don't fund early stage entrepreneurs. They do. So there is all kinds of scenarios. So you have to see where you fit in, and you have to turn your opportunity into a success. And I think that's the key essence of entrepreneurism. And there is always ups and downs, and you shouldn't get fluttered with the downs, right? How do you figure out how to turn these challenges into opportunities and then build a successful company? I mean, opportunities are huge in all of these areas, as we heard yesterday, from many of the speakers. So where do you fit in? Where do you have the expertise, right? Can you solve a problem, right, with a unique solution that you have, right, that addresses certain market segment?
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, BV, very much for your insights. And we want to maximize your opportunities. So BV is available after the session. I have a stack of business cards, and I want to maximize your opportunities as well. Anyone that talks to me, you get 1 hour of free legal advice. I'm a VC and M&A lawyer. Would love to learn about your company and help you succeed as well. Thank you very much.
Mention TiEcon, right?
TiEcon. Go TiEcon.
Thank you.